Welcome back to the Two Black Ravens Foundation channel. I'm your host, Adam. I'm a veteran professional photographer and a believer that art is in fact the universal language for healing. Now, before we dive in today, hit subscribe below, share this with your friends, family, and fellow veterans. Every click helps us grow our mission so we can keep teaching, creating, and giving back to our wounded, injured, and ill service members and veterans. Today, we're stepping into a controversial crossroads of art, politics, and critique. How abstract expressionism, particularly Jackson Pollock's work, was amplified by U.S. intelligence during the Cold War, and how that operation warped art's discourse for generations to come. We're going to be pulling back the curtain, and things are going to be brutally honest. Abstract expressionism didn't just appear fully formed. It was a reaction to the chaos of the 1940s and 50s, war, existential angst, and the search for both personal and national identity. So let's break this down. What we see here is action painting. This is an art style where an artist creates a painting through a vigorous gestural process, focusing on the act of creation itself as an event rather than the final product. Next is color field painting. Mark Rothko and his contemporaries shifted focus from gesture to emotion. Color field painting is a style of abstract expressionism that features large areas of flat, uniform color on a canvas to invoke emotion as well as contemplation. Here we see the technique of large-scale immersion. This style combines enormous size with multi-sensory experience to envelop the viewers, blurring the line between the artwork and the observer themselves. The size amplifies impact, transforms subtle gestures into statements, and makes the personal political. And finally, let's discuss how materials and surface choices played a role. Sand, enamel, commercial paint on raw canvas, these weren't mere rebellions against tradition. Texture, viscosity, and layering communicated freedom and individuality. The surface itself became a message, contrasting sharply with the polished propagandistic clarity of Soviet socialist realism. So, what was the rhetorical weight of all this? Every drip, smear, and color field was a metaphor for experimentation, freedom, and individuality. In the Cold War context, this wasn't just art, it was ideology. The U.S. could claim this chaotic expressive style as a visual emblem of liberty and personal agency. When you watch Pollock's pouring and Rothko's glowing rectangles, you're witnessing a dialogue between technique, emotion, and politics. It challenged viewers, demanded engagement, and knowingly or not, served as a visual ambassador for the American values, regardless of how mediocre the art truly was. So, how can we critique art? We're going to borrow a method from my military background and merge that with something that my MSU instructor, Jimmy Allen, once said to me during a conversation about critiques. You have to know the intent before evaluating execution. In the military, award packages were scored using action, impact, and result, at least 10 years ago. I can't speak for what they're doing today. In each section, we scored 0 through 2 for a perfect bullet score of 6 points. Then we added a multiplier of 1 through 10 to account for the mission importance. That's the subjective nature. Creating a rigorous, context-driven assessment that reduced favoritism. And we're going to apply that to Pollock today. So, as far as an objective evaluation goes, there are 7 elements of art. There's line, shape, form, color, space, texture, value. Additionally, there are 9 principles of art: balance, emphasis, harmony, movement, pattern, proportion, rhythm, unity, and variety. We need to score each aspect based on whether it serves the painting's intent, not just the chaos. Then apply a multiplier to weigh its importance to the work's overall impact. So I'm going to do that on my side, but I want you to do it on your side. Ask yourself, does it resonate with you? That'll be your multiplier. Does the intended emotional or philosophical message land? This is the culmination of an objective evaluation, not just a free pass for sloppy execution. And fun fact, Pollock started numbering his paintings so people would stop assuming what the painting represented, to prevent viewers from assigning a specific meaning to them and encourage them to appreciate the work as pure painting. To me, that's an immediate red flag for a lack of intent. So, how do we fairly critique a work of art, especially one as hyped as a Pollock? We're going to start with step one. We're going to evaluate the objective elements of art, and we're going to start with line. And again, these are my personal assessments. Yours may differ. As far as the lines go, they're abundant, intentional, rhythmic, creates energy and motion, fully supports the expressive intent. So I'm going to give it a score of 6 out of 6. I'm going to use shape and form, combine them together. You're going to get 2 scores that are the same. They're implied rather than defined, weak structural clarity, and undermines the spatial cohesion. So they both get a score of 2 out of 6. As far as color goes, occasional strategic contrast, often limited, emotional but inconsistent, sometimes supports intent, sometimes it distracts. So this has a score of 3 out of 6. As far as space goes, it's all over composition, challenges the hierarchy. Flattening is intentional, sometimes loses depth without adding meaning. So it's going to get a score of 4 out of 6 for me. Now texture. It's layered, tactile, vigorous, visually engaging, not always cohesive, but I'm going to give it a score of 5 out of 6. Value contrast exists but are limited. Contributes minimally to depth, rarely aligned with the intended emotional weight. I'm going to give it a score of 2 out of 6. Now we're going to move on to the principles of art and objectively rate those. As far as balance goes, he attempts balance through distribution of gesture, often visually chaotic, and frequently undermines readability. So it's going to get a score of 2 out of 6. Emphasis. No focal point, which is intentional. Creates energy, but not clarity. Supports the overall mission. So I'm going to give it a score of 3 out of 6. Harmony. Gestures repeat. Patchy cohesion. Harmony is inconsistent. I'm going to give it a score of 2 out of 6. Movement. This is his strongest aspect. The eye travels in kinetic rhythm, perfectly aligned with his intent. I'm going to give this a score of 6 out of 6. Pattern. Accidental patterns emerge, but they're inconsistent and rarely intentional. So this one gets a score of 2 out of 6 for me. And proportion. The scale is huge, but internal proportions waver. Doesn't always support the narrative and often overwhelms without purpose. So again, this is going to get a score of 2 out of 6 for me. Rhythm. He's got strong gestural cadence, visually compelling, and supports the emotional flow, which was what he was going for. So it's a score of 6 out of 6. Variety. Diverse marks and layers, sometimes scattered, partly enhances the experience. I'm going to go on the higher end, and I'm going to give it a score of 4 out of 6. Unity. Attempts unity through repetition, partial cohesiveness, falls apart in sections. This is a low one for me. It's going to be a score of 2 out of 6. The total objective score so far is 53 out of 96 possible points. That's roughly a 55% success rate. Now, moving to step 2, we're going to apply that mission importance multiplier. That's the subjective response. Pollock's mission importance to use the physical gesture to visually express emotional autonomy. That's what he was going for. So realistically, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. That's the multiplier, 8. So the final score, 55 times 8 equals 424 out of a possible 960 points. That's a 44% overall effectiveness. Final assessment, Pollock absolutely excelled in movement, line, rhythm, and energy, but his work struggled in balance, proportion, unity, value, and structural cohesion. Using a disciplined evaluation method, Pollock's paintings do not exhibit the consistent formal mastery his myth implies. So, what's the lesson? Critique art like any other disciplined evaluation: objective first, subjective last. Pollock has the value, but not because it checks every box, but because the CIA inflated it. Using the structural framework, whether grading a military award or a canvas, separates skill from spectacle. Pollock, Rothko, Newman, knowingly or not, were amplified through covert cultural campaigns set in place by the CIA and the Modern Museum of Art, designed to signal American creativity as freedom and individuality. Front organizations funneled money, prestige, and visibility into exhibitions, publications, and galleries, not even just in America, also in Europe. Operation Mockingbird style tactics extended beyond journalism. They shaped public perception without revealing government involvement. What was the goal? It was to craft a narrative. American abstract expressionism equals cultural superiority, which equals ideological proof. Critics and audience perceived genius not due to technique, but because the art was politically useful. Technique often became secondary to the narrative. This strategy created a pretense of taste. Technically rigorous but politically neutral work was sidelined. And what did the critics do? Many inherited this framework. When they say art is subjective, it's often a lazy fallback rooted in Cold War propaganda, a legacy of manufactured hype. And what's that lesson? We've got to separate craft from mythology, evaluate skill, composition, and intention independently of the story surrounding a work. Pollock's visibility was engineered. Covert funding, curated exhibitions, amplified criticism, all of which created a feedback loop. Hype begets value. Critics, consciously or not, reinforce this hierarchy. Scale and gesture were praised and hyped because it fit the narrative. And quality, like we already talked about, took a back seat. Sound familiar? It should, because modern social media algorithms are working the same exact way. Engagement, repetition, and hype inflate perceived value, rewarding emotion and controversy that drives engagement over rigor and skill. The takeaway from this: rigorous evaluation matters. Hiding behind art is subjective is intellectually lazy, historically misinformed, and honestly unfair to artists who are genuinely pushing boundaries. You've got to recognize hype, separate skill from spectacle, and insist on objective critique grounded in craft. Skill cannot be negotiable. Knowing what makes art objectively good, that's your filter against hype, as well as being conned. Ever since I started photography, my dad has always told me, subject matter matters. But so does context. Funding, promotion, politics, these all shape perception, but they can't shape true artistry. Just like the CIA amplified Pollock, today's algorithms, gallery trends, and influencers shape what's seen as important. But as we all know, social media is putting out more and more of the same regurgitated content. Artists are just duplicating the last viral post. Objectivity has to matter if we want to see amazing art again, and not just hacks and entry-level unskilled artists trying to ruin another industry for a quick buck. Use objective evaluation before subjective response. Only then can personal impressions be insightful rather than lazy or misleading. Abstract expressionism teaches dual lessons. Explore technical innovation and expressive freedom, but also that thrill and spectacle can mask weakness, and hype can masquerade as mastery. Art is never just art. It's a mirror held up to society for us to evaluate our culture. It's a map to navigate factual truth paired with emotional truth for a period during history. But it can also be used as a weapon as well as propaganda. Pollock's drips are remarkable to some, not to me personally, but understanding how they were amplified changes how we evaluate all art. If this insight helped you see the difference between rigor and hype, subscribe, share, and join the conversation. Until next time, keep questioning, keep creating, and never accept that lazy artist subjective excuse. And remember, we don't need more perfect art, we need more honest art.